The wrong number. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the silence of my apartment, startling me awake. Rain pattered against my bedroom window, the sound blending with the distant wail of sirens that never seemed to stop in this part of the city. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, my eyes still heavy with sleep, the screen's harsh light momentarily blinding me in the darkness. Hello? My voice was raspy, thick with exhaustion. 3 consecutive night shifts at the hospital had left me drained, my body begging for the uninterrupted sleep that constantly eluded me. Silence answered me, followed by the soft sound of breathing. I checked the time. 2:37 a.m. Hello? I repeated, irritation seeping into my voice. If this is a prank call, it's not funny. Where is it? The voice that finally responded was deep, controlled, with an edge that instantly sent a chill down my spine. There was authority in those 3 simple words, a command rather than a question. I think you have the wrong number, I said, sitting up in bed, suddenly more alert. Don't play games with me. The voice dropped lower, each word pronounced with deliberate precision. You were supposed to deliver it an hour ago. Where is it? My heart raced as confusion clouded my mind. Sir, I honestly don't know what you're talking about. You've called the wrong person. My name is Ellie Morgan. I'm a nurse at Mercy General, and I was asleep until your call. The silence that followed felt like it stretched for an eternity. I could still hear his breathing, measured and calm, a stark contrast to my own shallow, rapid breaths. Describe yourself. The abrupt demand caught me off guard. What? No, I'm hanging up now. Describe yourself, or I'll find you and see for myself. The threat wasn't delivered with raised volume or obvious menace. It was the certainty in his tone that made my blood run cold. This is ridiculous. I swiped a hand through my tangled hair, trying to think clearly despite my exhaustion. I'm calling the police. A low, humorless chuckle came through the phone. By all means. Tell them Alessandro Russo would like a word. The name meant nothing to me, but something in the way he said it, as if I should recognize it, as if everyone should, made me hesitate. Look, I don't know who you are or what you want, but dark hair or light? I blinked, thrown by the interruption. What? Your hair, Ellie Morgan. Is it dark or light? I shouldn't have answered. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up, to block this number, to forget this bizarre middle-of-the-night conversation. Instead, bewildered and still half asleep, I said, dark, brown. Look, please stop. Eye color? This is harassment. Eye color. Not a question anymore. Green. The word escaped before I could stop it. Please, just leave me alone. I heard muffled voices in the background, as if he'd covered the phone to speak to someone else. When he returned, his voice had changed. Softer, almost thoughtful. You truly have no idea who I am or what I'm talking about, do you? Relief flooded through me. No, I don't. This is a wrong number. I'm sorry if you're looking for someone else, but I can't help you. Another pause. Interesting. The word lingered between us, loaded with meaning I couldn't decipher. I apologize for disturbing your sleep, Ellie Morgan, nurse at Mercy General. Sleep well. The call ended, and I sat motionless in my bed, clutching my phone, staring at the darkened screen. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the window in an erratic rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, a wrong number, a misunderstanding, something I'd laugh about tomorrow. But I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, in answering that call, I'd made a terrible mistake. I dragged myself through my shift the next day, the strange call haunting the edges of my consciousness as I moved from patient to patient. Mercy General was understaffed as usual, the emergency room overflowing with the aftermath of a multi-car pileup on the freeway. By mid-afternoon, I'd nearly convinced myself the nocturnal conversation had been a dream, a product of my overtired mind. "You look like hell warmed over," remarked Tracy, another nurse who'd been working at Mercy since before I was born. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes sharp as she assessed me over her reading glasses. "Thanks for the vote of confidence," I mumbled, updating a patient chart at the nurse's station. 3 night shifts followed by a day shift will do that to you. Tracy snorted. When I was your age, I worked doubles for a week straight during the '99 flu epidemic. You kids have no stamina. I didn't bother arguing. Tracy's work ethic was legendary, as was her complete lack of sympathy for what she called millennial fragility. There's a delivery for you at reception, she said, handing me another chart. Bed 4 needs their dressing changed. A delivery? I didn't order anything. Tracy shrugged. Well, someone likes you enough to send flowers. Must be nice. Flowers? I hadn't dated anyone in over a year. Not since the disastrous relationship with Mark, a surgical resident who'd been seeing 3 other women simultaneously. My birthday wasn't for months, and my mother only sent practical gifts like socks or kitchen gadgets. Curiosity propelled me toward reception during my break. The bouquet waiting for me was massive, a dramatic arrangement of dark red roses and white lilies that must have cost a fortune. The receptionist, Dina, widened her eyes as I approached. Secret admirer? She asked, waggling her eyebrows. Must be a mistake, I said, looking for a card. No mistake. Guy who delivered it asked for Ellie Morgan specifically. Said to verify your ID before giving them to you. She handed me a small envelope tucked among the blooms. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it, a sense of foreboding washing over me even before I read the neat, handwritten message inside. Wrong numbers sometimes lead to the right connections. Looking forward to making yours. The card had no contact information, no further explanation, just that cryptic message and an initial. Alessandro. It had to be from the man who'd called me last night. Who delivered these? I asked Dina, trying to keep my voice steady. Some delivery service I've never seen before. Guy in a suit. Looked expensive. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Cute, too, in a scary kind of way. Built like a bouncer. Did he say anything else? Nope. Just waited while I checked you were on shift, then left. She studied my face. You okay, Ellie? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, just surprised. I forced a smile. Would you mind keeping these at reception until my shift ends? They're too big for the break room. As I walked back to the ER, my mind raced. How had he found out where I worked? I'd mentioned Mercy General during our brief conversation, but that didn't explain how he'd discovered my full name or shift schedule. The thought sent a chill through me despite the hospital's perpetually overheated corridors. For the rest of my shift, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, studying the faces of visitors more carefully than usual, jumping whenever someone called my name. By the time I clocked out at 8 p.m., my nerves were frayed. I debated leaving the flowers behind, but ultimately decided to take them. Something about abandoning them felt like it would be perceived as rejection. And though I couldn't explain why, that possibility frightened me more than accepting them. The hospital parking garage was dimly lit as always, despite numerous staff complaints about safety. I clutched my pepper spray keychain in one hand, the unwieldy flower arrangement in the other, and hurried toward my aging Honda Civic parked in the far corner of level 2. I was so focused on reaching my car that I almost missed it. The black Mercedes sedan parked 2 spaces away from mine, its engine running, windows tinted too dark to see inside. I slowed, alarm bells ringing in my head. That spot had been empty this morning. As I approached my car, the passenger door of the Mercedes opened. I froze. Flowers clutched to my chest like a shield, pepper spray raised. A man stepped out, tall and imposing in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His movements were fluid, unhurried, as he straightened and turned to face me. Dark hair, styled impeccably. Strong jawline, clean-shaven. And eyes, dark, penetrating eyes that seemed to look right through me. Ellie Morgan, he said, his voice instantly recognizable from the phone. It wasn't a question. I took a step back. How did you find me? A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth, though it didn't reach his eyes. Finding people is rarely difficult with the right resources. What do you want? To apologize properly for disturbing your sleep, and to satisfy my curiosity. He leaned against the car, hands in his pockets, the picture of casual confidence. Yet there was nothing casual about the intensity of his gaze, or the way another man, large, with the unmistakable bulge of a shoulder holster beneath his jacket, stood vigilantly beside the driver's door. I clutched the pepper spray tighter. Curiosity about what? About what kind of woman answers a wrong number at 2:37 in the morning and proceeds to engage in conversation with a complete stranger. He tilted his head slightly. Most would have hung up immediately. I was half asleep, I said defensively, and I'm a nurse. Answering calls at odd hours is part of my job. Ah, yes, the caretaker. Always putting others first. He studied me for a moment. The flowers. Do they meet your approval? I glanced down at the bouquet, its heavy perfume filling the space between us. They're extravagant and unnecessary. I disagree. Beauty should be acknowledged with beauty. The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, caught me off guard. I shifted uncomfortably. Look, Mr. Alessandro, he corrected. Alessandro Russo. Mr. Russo, I continued firmly. I don't know what you want from me, but this. Finding out where I work, waiting for me in a parking garage. This is stalking. It's illegal and terrifying. Something darkened in his expression. I assure you, if I wanted to terrify you, there are far more effective methods at my disposal. A chill ran down my spine. That sounds like a threat. Merely an observation. He straightened, taking a step toward me. I instinctively stepped back, and he paused, seeming to reconsider his approach. I've made you uncomfortable. That wasn't my intention. What was your intention? He studied me for a long moment before answering. To meet the woman with the voice that's been echoing in my head all day. To see if her eyes were truly as green as emeralds, as I imagined. Despite my fear, heat rushed to my cheeks. Well, now you've seen me. Mystery solved. Please leave me alone. What if I don't want to? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications. Before I could formulate a response, the man by the driver's door spoke quietly but urgently. Boss, we've got company. Security patrol coming this way. Alessandro's expression remained unchanged, but I sensed a shift in his posture, a nearly imperceptible tensing. It seems our conversation will have to continue another time. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, holding it out to me. My private number. Should you ever find yourself in need of assistance? I made no move to take it. I won't be calling. That ghost of a smile returned. We'll see. He placed the card on the hood of my car and opened the passenger door of the Mercedes. Before getting in, he paused, looking at me one last time. By the way, Ellie Morgan, the flowers were just the beginning. From now on, you're mine. The door closed with a soft thud, and the Mercedes pulled away smoothly, disappearing down the ramp as a security vehicle turned the corner. I stood frozen, his words ringing in my ears, the card on my car seeming to burn with an invisible heat. From now on, you're mine. Who was this man who could say such a thing to a complete stranger, and why? Despite the fear coursing through me, did I feel a treacherous flicker of curiosity about what exactly he meant? With shaking hands, I picked up the card, intending to throw it away. Instead, I found myself slipping it into my pocket before unlocking my car and placing the flowers carefully on the passenger seat. As I drove home through the gathering darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just veered dramatically off course, like a train jumping its tracks, and that the crash, when it came, would be spectacular. The card burned in my pocket all the way home, like a hot coal against my thigh. I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other clutched around my phone, ready to call 911 at the first sign of a sleek black Mercedes in my rearview mirror. But no one followed me, at least no one I could see. My apartment building was a far cry from luxury, a converted textile factory from the 1940s with exposed brick walls, drafty windows, and pipes that groaned like tormented ghosts. But the rent was affordable on a nurse's salary, and the massive windows flooded my small space with light during the day. At night, though, those same windows made me feel exposed, visible to anyone who might be watching from the darkness outside. I triple-checked the locks on my door before setting the flowers on my kitchen counter. They seemed out of place in my modest apartment, too opulent, too perfect. like Alessandro himself had seemed against the dingy backdrop of the hospital parking garage. "From now on, you're mine." The words replayed in my mind as I changed out of my scrubs and into sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. What kind of man said something like that to a woman he'd just met? A dangerous man. A powerful man. A man used to getting exactly what he wanted. Alessandro Russo. The name still meant nothing to me, but the way he'd carried himself, the silent bodyguard, the expensive car, all screamed money and influence. I pulled out my laptop and typed his name into the search bar, my curiosity overcoming my better judgment. The results were surprisingly sparse for someone who carried himself with such importance. A few mentions in business journals about real estate holdings, a photo at a charity gala from 3 years ago, and a brief mention in an article about emerging forces in the city's economic landscape. Nothing that explained why the mere mention of his name was supposed to deter me from calling the police. I clicked on the charity gala photo. There he was, immaculate in a tuxedo, his arm around a willowy blonde whose smile seemed forced. His own expression was inscrutable, eyes focused somewhere beyond the camera, as if his mind were on more important matters. The caption identified the woman as Sofia Valentini, daughter of retired businessman Victor Valentini. Something about the names triggered a vague memory. I searched for Victor Valentini and found considerably more information, including a decade-old article about his retirement following federal investigations into money laundering and suspected ties to organized crime. The charges had been dropped due to insufficient evidence. My blood ran cold. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. The authority in Alessandro's voice. The bodyguard. The way he'd said his name as if I should recognize it. Mafia. He had to be connected to the Mafia. I closed my laptop with shaking hands, suddenly afraid that even searching his name might somehow alert him. It was an irrational fear, but nothing about this situation was rational. Normal people didn't get phone calls in the middle of the night from Mafia bosses. Normal people didn't have dangerous men waiting for them in parking garages, claiming ownership over them after a single meeting. But nothing about my life had been normal since my parents died in the house fire when I was 19, leaving me alone in the world except for a mountain of medical bills that their insurance hadn't covered. I'd worked my way through nursing school, taking double shifts whenever possible, living on ramen and coffee, driven by the need to help others the way the nurses had tried to help my parents in their final hours. I'd built a life for myself out of the ashes of tragedy, a small, quiet life, but mine. The thought that this stranger could threaten that with his ominous words and intense stare filled me with equal parts fear and anger. I pulled out the business card he'd given me. It was elegantly simple, thick cream cardstock with just his name and a phone number embossed in dark ink. No company name, no title, no address. I should throw it away. I should report him to the police. I should request a transfer to another hospital, move to another apartment, change my phone number. Instead, I placed the card on my nightstand and tried to sleep, the scent of those blood-red roses drifting from the kitchen, invading my dreams with visions of dark eyes and whispered threats. 3 days passed without further contact from Alessandro Russo. No more flowers, no phone calls, no luxury cars waiting in the parking garage. I began to breathe easier, to convince myself that whatever strange fixation he'd had on me had passed. Perhaps he'd found the person he'd actually been trying to reach that night. Perhaps he'd moved on to his next obsession. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts to keep my mind occupied. On the 4th day, exhaustion caught up with me. I nearly administered the wrong medication to an elderly patient before Tracy noticed and stopped me. "Go home, Morgan," she said, not unkindly. "You're dead on your feet. I'll cover the rest of your shift." Too tired to argue, I thanked her and made my way to the locker room to collect my things. As I opened my locker, a small white envelope fell out. My name was written on the front in the same elegant handwriting as the card that had accompanied the flowers. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dinner, tonight. 8 p.m. A car will be waiting. A no request, no question mark. Just a command, an expectation of obedience. I crumpled the note in my fist, anger flaring through my exhaustion. Who did he think he was? Yet beneath the anger lurked something else. A forbidden flutter of excitement. a curiosity I couldn't quite suppress. How had he gotten into my locker? How long had he been watching me, planning this? I pushed the thought aside and tossed the crumpled note into the trash. I wasn't going to dinner with a man who thought he could simply command my presence. I wasn't going anywhere near Alessandro Russo ever again. By the time I reached my apartment, a thunderstorm had rolled in, matching my turbulent mood. I stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the hospital smell and the tension in my shoulders. As steam filled the bathroom, I closed my eyes and tried to empty my mind. Instead, I found myself remembering the intensity in Alessandro's gaze, the quiet confidence in his voice when he'd said, "From now on, you're mine." Not a request or a hope, but a statement of fact, as if he'd glimpsed our future and was simply informing me of what he already knew to be true. I shut off the water with an angry twist and wrapped myself in a towel, irritated by my own traitorous thoughts. I was not some naive heroine in a romance novel, seduced by danger and dark promises. I was a practical woman who had survived too much to risk everything for a momentary thrill. As I dressed in my most comfortable pajamas, I glanced at the clock. 7:43 p.m. In 17 minutes, a car would be waiting somewhere outside my building, and Alessandro Russo would be expecting me to get into it, to play along with whatever game he was orchestrating. Not happening, I muttered to myself, heating up leftover Chinese food and settling on my couch with a mindless reality show for company. At exactly 8:00 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately after. Again, I ignored it. The third time I answered, my patience evaporating. "Stop calling me. The car is waiting, Ellie." His voice was calm, unperturbed by my hostility. "I'm not coming." "Yes, you are." Again that certainty, that absolute confidence. "I don't respond well to commands, Mr. Russo." "Alessandro," he corrected. And it wasn't a command. It was an expectation. "Well, your expectations are about to be severely disappointed." I stabbed at a piece of sweet and sour chicken with my fork. "I'm in my pajamas, eating takeout, and I have no intention of going anywhere with you." There was a pause, and I thought I detected a hint of amusement in his voice when he spoke again. "What kind of takeout?" The question was so unexpected that I answered truthfully. "Chinese. From Golden Dragon on 9th. Their dumplings are atrocious. The chef doesn't use enough ginger." I blinked in surprise. "You've eaten at Golden Dragon?" A soft laugh. "I make it a point to know my city, Ellie. Every restaurant, every street corner, every hidden gem and disappointing tourist trap." "Is that how you found me? Because you know your city?" "No. Finding you required more specialized resources." A chill ran through me despite the warmth of my apartment. "That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be." He paused. "I had hoped to discuss this over dinner, but since you've chosen to defy my invitation..." "It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. I suppose I'll have to be direct." He continued as if I hadn't interrupted. "The night you answered my call, I was expecting to hear from someone else. Someone who had stolen something extremely valuable from me." I set down my fork, suddenly alert. "I told you, I don't know anything about..." "I believe you," he said, cutting me off. "What I find curious is that your phone number is just one digit different from his. That kind of coincidence makes me suspicious." "It's just a coincidence," I insisted. "Millions of people have similar phone numbers." "Perhaps. But when the man who betrayed me ends up dead in the harbor 2 days after I spoke with you, and his phone is nowhere to be found..." He let the implication hang in the air. My blood turned to ice. "Are you saying..." "Did you kill him?" "I'm saying that certain parties might believe you're connected to a man who stole from very dangerous people. People who might not be as discerning as I am." I stood up, moving to the window to peer through the blinds at the street below. Rain lashed against the glass, blurring the view. "Are you threatening me?" "On the contrary, I'm offering you protection." I let out a humorless laugh. "Protection from what? From whom? From you and your dangerous friends?" "From whoever might come looking for what Gregory Petrov stole before his unfortunate accident. From whoever might believe that his last phone call, traced to your number, means you have it or know where it is." Gregory Petrov. The name meant nothing to me, Yet apparently my phone number's similarity to his had entangled me in whatever dangerous game had cost him his life. "What did he steal?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That's not a conversation for an unsecured phone line. His tone was clipped now, all business. "The car will wait another 15 minutes. I suggest you reconsider your position." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood frozen by the window, the implications of his words sinking in. If what he said was true, if this Gregory person had stolen from dangerous people and then ended up dead, anyone connected to him, even mistakenly, could be in danger. But if Alessandro was involved in his death, wasn't he one of those dangerous people? How could I trust him to protect me from a threat he might have created? I peered through the blinds again, scanning the street until I spotted it. A black car idling at the curb, wipers moving rhythmically against the downpour. Even through the rain-streaked window, I could tell it wasn't the Mercedes from the parking garage. This was larger, more subtle, with darkened windows that revealed nothing of its occupants. Waiting for me. My phone buzzed with a text message. 12 minutes. My heart pounded in my chest as I weighed my options. Stay home, ignore his warning, and hope it was all an elaborate lie designed to manipulate me, or go with him. Step willingly into the orbit of a man who exuded danger from every pore. Neither choice felt safe, but at least if I went with him, I might get some answers. With a muttered curse, I threw open my closet and grabbed the first decent outfit I could find. Black jeans, the emerald green sweater that my mother always said brought out my eyes, and ankle boots. I pulled my damp hair into a hasty ponytail, applied minimal makeup, and grabbed my phone and keys. Another text arrived as I was locking my door. 5 minutes. I took the stairs instead of waiting for the ancient elevator, my mind racing faster than my feet. What was I doing? This was madness. I should call the police, report everything, the strange call, the flowers, the note in my locker, the ominous warnings about a dead man whose number was similar to mine. But what proof did I have? A business card, flowers with no threatening message, a dinner invitation. Nothing illegal, nothing that couldn't be explained away as the actions of an interested man, perhaps overeager but not criminal. And if Alessandro Russo was what I suspected, a man with connections to organized crime, would the police even be able to protect me, or would involving them only put me in more danger? I pushed through the lobby doors and into the rain, pulling my jacket tight around me. The black car sat exactly where I'd seen it from my window, engine running, a dark silhouette visible behind the wheel. As I approached, the rear door opened from inside. I hesitated, rain soaking through my clothes, plastering my hair to my face despite my hood. "Ms. Morgan." The driver had stepped out, holding an umbrella over me, the same man who'd been guarding Alessandro's car in the parking garage. "Mr. Russo is waiting." I looked past him into the darkness of the car's interior. Once I stepped inside, there would be no turning back. I would be acknowledging something I didn't fully understand, agreeing to rules I hadn't been told. "If I get in this car," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I want your word that I'll be brought home safely tonight." The driver's expression remained impassive. "Mr. Russo gives you his personal guarantee of your safety." It wasn't the reassurance I wanted, but it was all I was going to get. Taking a deep breath, I ducked into the car, the door closing behind me with a soft, expensive-sounding thud. The interior was dark, illuminated only by the soft glow of the city lights filtering through rain-streaked windows. And there he was, Alessandro Russo, seated across from me, his face half in shadow, watching me with those intense eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "You came," he said simply, as if he'd never doubted I would. "You didn't leave me much choice." I tried to keep my voice level, to hide the trembling of my hands by clasping them tightly in my lap. His lips curved into that same ghost of a smile I'd seen in the parking garage. "There's always a choice, Ellie. You've just made your first one." The car pulled away from the curb, carrying me into the rainy night and deeper into Alessandro Russo's world. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped into a beautiful, gilded cage, and that the man sitting across from me held the only key. The car glided through rain-slicked streets, the silence inside broken only by the rhythmic sweep of wipers against glass. Alessandro watched me with unsettling intensity, as if cataloging every detail of my appearance. I fought the urge to fidget under his gaze. "You look different with your hair up," he finally said. I touched my hasty ponytail self-consciously. I had 5 minutes to get ready. It wasn't a criticism. His eyes lingered on my exposed neck before returning to my face. "Green suits you. Brings out your eyes, as I suspected it would." The compliment made me uncomfortable, not because it was unwelcome, but because of how it made something flutter in my chest despite my fear. I changed the subject abruptly. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere private, somewhere safe." "Those aren't always the same thing," I pointed out. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Perceptive. But in this case they are." The car turned onto the highway, heading toward the wealthier northern suburbs. Rain hammered against the roof, creating a cocoon of sound that made this strange journey feel even more surreal. "Tell me about Gregory Petrov," I said, determined to keep the conversation on the reason I was here. "You said he stole something from you." Alessandro's expression hardened, not from me specifically, from an associate. But the distinction is irrelevant now. "Because he's dead." "Yes." The bluntness of his answer chilled me. "Did you kill him?" "Would it matter if I did?" "Of course it would matter," I exclaimed, anger momentarily overriding my fear. "I'm sitting in a car with you. I deserve to know if you're a murderer." He studied me for a long moment, his face unreadable in the shifting shadows. "I didn't kill Gregory Petrov. But I can't say I mourned his passing. What did he steal that was so important?" "Information. The kind that could destroy lives." "Blackmail material?" "Of a sort." He reached into an interior compartment and withdrew a crystal decanter and 2 glasses. "Drink?" I shook my head. "I want to keep my wits about me." That ghost of a smile appeared again. "Smart girl." "I'm not a girl. I'm 30 years old." "A woman, then." He poured himself a measure of amber liquid. "A beautiful, intelligent woman who answers wrong numbers in the middle of the night and walks into danger with her eyes wide open." "I didn't walk into danger. I was dragged into it by your phone call." He took a slow sip of his drink. "Fate has interesting ways of bringing people together. This isn't fate. This is a mistake. A coincidence of phone numbers. I don't believe in coincidences, Ellie." The way he said my name sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. Everything happens for a reason. I looked out the window, trying to determine where we were. The city lights had fallen away, replaced by the darkness of what appeared to be a wooded area. Unease crept up my spine. "You said we were going somewhere safe." "We are." He nodded toward the windshield, where massive wrought iron gates were swinging open to admit our vehicle. Beyond the gates stretched a long, winding driveway, flanked by perfectly manicured trees. At the end stood a mansion that looked like something out of a Gothic novel. All stone and angles, windows glowing with warm light against the stormy night. "This is your house?" I asked, unable to keep the awe from my voice. "One of them." The car stopped under a covered portico. Before the driver could open my door, Alessandro was there, offering his hand. I hesitated before taking it, startled by the warmth of his skin against mine, by the strength in his fingers as they closed around my hand. The main entrance was guarded by 2 men in dark suits, who nodded respectfully as Alessandro led me inside. The foyer was cavernous, with a sweeping staircase and marble floors that echoed with our footsteps. Art that looked museum-worthy adorned the walls, and a crystal chandelier cast rainbows across the space. "This way," Alessandro said, guiding me with a light touch at the small of my back that burned through the fabric of my sweater. We passed through several rooms, each more opulent than the last, until we reached what appeared to be a study. A fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across leather-bound books that lined the walls. 2 wingback chairs faced the hearth, a small table between them set with a silver tray. "Please, sit." Alessandro gestured to one of the chairs. "Are you hungry? I imagine your Chinese takeout was interrupted." As if on cue, my stomach growled. I hadn't eaten more than a few bites before his call. "A little," I admitted. He pressed a button on the wall, and within minutes, a woman in a simple black uniform appeared. "Bring us dinner in here, Margot, and tea for Ms. Morgan." She nodded and disappeared without a word. I sank into the chair, its leather soft and worn in a way that suggested generations of use. The heat from the fire warmed my rain-chilled skin, making me aware of how damp my clothes still were. "You must have questions," Alessandro said, taking the seat opposite me. "Dozens," I replied, starting with why you brought me to your home instead of a restaurant. Restaurants have ears, waiters, other diners, staff who can be bribed or threatened. He steepled his fingers. "What we need to discuss requires absolute privacy. And what exactly do we need to discuss?" His dark eyes reflected the firelight. "Your safety, and what it will cost." A chill ran through me despite the warmth of the room. Cost? Everything has a price, Ellie. Protection most of all. The woman, Margot, returned with a tray laden with covered dishes, which she arranged on the table between us. She poured tea into a delicate porcelain cup for me and whiskey into a crystal tumbler for Alessandro before departing as silently as she'd arrived. I lifted the silver cover from my plate to find a perfectly seared steak, roasted vegetables, and potatoes arranged with the precision of fine dining. Steam rose from the food, carrying mouth-watering aromas that reminded me how hungry I truly was. "Eat," Alessandro said, uncovering his own identical meal. "We'll talk after." Despite my apprehension, I couldn't resist the food. We ate in silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the clink of silverware against china. Alessandro moved with the easy grace of a man accustomed to luxury, to having his every need anticipated and met without having to ask. When we'd finished, Margot reappeared to clear the dishes, leaving fresh tea and whiskey in her wake. Only when the door closed behind her did Alessandro speak again. "Gregory Petrov worked for an associate of mine for 5 years. He had access to sensitive information, client lists, financial records, evidence of certain transactions that would interest the authorities." He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. 3 weeks ago, he disappeared, along with a hard drive containing all of this information. And this associate is someone who prefers to remain nameless, someone who trusted Petrov and was betrayed. "Someone in the Mafia," I said bluntly. "Like you." Alessandro's expression didn't change. "You've been doing research. Enough to know that the name Valentini is connected to organized crime, and that you were photographed with Sofia Valentini, Victor's daughter, my ex-fiancé." He took a sip of his whiskey. "Our engagement ended 2 years ago." This new information took me by surprise. I didn't realize that I was capable of normal human relationships. There was a hint of bitterness in his tone. "I assure you, I am, or was. Sofia decided the life I could offer wasn't worth the complications that came with it." I studied his face, trying to reconcile the dangerous man who'd waited for me in a parking garage with someone who had experienced heartbreak. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was for the best." He set down his glass. "But we're not here to discuss my past relationships. No, we're here because a dead man had a phone number similar to mine, and now you think I'm in danger. I know you're in danger." The certainty in his voice sent a chill through me. 2 days ago, someone broke into Petrov's apartment. It had already been searched by my people, but whoever came after found something we missed. A piece of paper with your phone number written on it. My breath caught. That doesn't make any sense. I never met this man. Why would he have my number? That's what I intend to find out. Alessandro leaned forward, his eyes intense in the firelight. But until we do, you need protection. My protection. And what does that entail exactly? You'll stay here, where I can ensure your safety. You'll continue your work at the hospital, but my men will drive you there and back. You won't go anywhere alone, not until we find what Petrov stole and determine why he had your number. I stared at him in disbelief. "You expect me to move in with you? A complete stranger who, by his own admission, is involved in organized crime? I expect you to choose survival." His voice was calm, matter of fact. "The people looking for that hard drive won't hesitate to hurt you to get what they want, whether you have it or not." "And you would?" I challenged. "Hesitate to hurt me, I mean." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, at my directness. "Yes," he said simply. "I would." "Why?" "You don't know me." "I know enough." He stood abruptly, moving to a desk in the corner of the room. From a drawer, he withdrew a folder, which he handed to me. "See for yourself." With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was what appeared to be a dossier on me. My birth certificate, college transcripts, employment records, medical history, even photos of me at various ages. The most recent was from just last week, showing me leaving my apartment building in the early morning, coffee cup in hand, unaware of being watched. Horror and violation washed over me. "How dare you?" I whispered, closing the folder and shoving it away from me. "How dare you invade my privacy like this?" I needed to know who I was dealing with. He reclaimed the folder, returning it to the desk, and I found someone remarkable. A woman who lost her parents in a tragic fire at 19, who worked her way through nursing school despite crippling debt, who chose a profession dedicated to helping others. Each word was like a physical blow, a reminder of how completely this stranger had invaded my life. Stop it. Someone who visits her parents' graves every month with fresh flowers, who volunteers at a children's hospital on her days off, who hasn't been in a relationship since a surgical resident named Mark Hunter betrayed her trust over a year ago. Tears burned in my eyes. I said, "Stop it!" To my surprise, he did. He returned to his chair, giving me space to collect myself. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Ellie. I'm trying to show you that I've been thorough in my assessment, that I know exactly who I'm offering to protect." I wiped angrily at a tear that had escaped. "And what's the price for this protection? You said everything has a cost." "Yes." He studied me over the rim of his glass. "The cost is your trust, your complete and total trust in me." I let out a humorless laugh. "After what you just showed me? After learning you've been stalking me, investigating me, photographing me without my knowledge or consent? How could I possibly trust you? Because despite all that, I'm still your best chance at survival." He set down his glass with deliberate care. "And because I'm the only one who knows why Gregory Petrov had your number." My heart skipped a beat. "You said you didn't know." "I said I intended to find out. There's a difference." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small photo, which he placed on the table between us. "Do you recognize this man?" I picked up the photo, studying the face of a middle-aged man with thinning hair and sharp features. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place him. "I'm not sure. Maybe. He could have been a patient at some point. His name is Richard Dawson. He was your father's business partner before the fire." The photo slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. "What?" "No, my father was an accountant. He worked for a firm downtown. He didn't have a business partner." Alessandro's expression remained impassive. "Your father, James Morgan, was indeed an accountant. But he also had a side business laundering money for certain organizations. Richard Dawson was his contact." The room seemed to tilt around me. "That's not possible. My father was a good man. He would never—" "People are rarely as simple as we need them to be, especially parents." There was something like sympathy in his voice now. "Your father got in over his head. When he tried to get out, to go to the authorities. The fire," I whispered, the implication hitting me like a physical blow. "Are you saying the fire wasn't an accident?" Alessandro's silence was answer enough. The world as I had known it shattered around me, reconstructing itself into something darker, more sinister. All these years, I'd believed my parents had died in a tragic accident. Faulty wiring, the investigators had said. An old house with outdated electrical systems. Bad luck. "No," I said, standing so quickly that my chair scraped against the wooden floor. "No, I don't believe you. This is some kind of sick manipulation. You're making this up to control me. I have no reason to lie to you, Ellie." He remained seated, watching me with those dark, inscrutable eyes. "And every reason to tell you the truth. Gregory Petrov worked for Richard Dawson. The hard drive he stole contains evidence of decades of financial crimes, including the money transfers to the man who set the fire that killed your parents." My legs gave out beneath me, and I sank back into the chair. "Why would he have my number? Because you're the daughter of James Morgan. Because someone, possibly Dawson himself, might believe that your father told you something before he died, something that could lead to the missing hard drive." But he didn't, I said, my voice breaking. The last thing my father said to me was, "Good night, sweetheart," when I left for my evening class. There were no secrets, no hidden messages. Perhaps not consciously, but you might know something without realizing its significance. Alessandro leaned forward, his gaze intense. Think, Ellie. Did your father ever mention names? Places? Did he give you anything to keep safe? I shook my head, struggling to process this tsunami of revelations. No, nothing like that. He was just Dad. He helped me with my homework. He took me fishing on Sundays. My voice trailed off as a memory surfaced, something I hadn't thought about in years. Alessandro noticed my hesitation immediately. What is it? Nothing important. Just a few weeks before the fire, he gave me a necklace for my 19th birthday. A locket. He said it had belonged to my grandmother, but I'd never seen my mother wear it, which seemed strange. I touched my throat, remembering. I lost it in the aftermath of the fire. With everything else happening, the funerals, the medical bills, trying to figure out how to survive, a missing necklace didn't seem important. What did it look like? Silver, oval-shaped, with a filigree pattern on the front. Inside was a tiny picture of my parents on their wedding day. I frowned, trying to remember details. The clasp was broken. Dad said he'd get it fixed, but then... Alessandro stood abruptly. We need to find that locket. I told you it was lost after the fire. Everything was chaos. I moved 3 times in the following year, trying to find affordable housing while staying in school. It could be anywhere. Or it could be exactly where someone put it for safekeeping. He crossed to a telephone on the desk, pressed a button, and spoke rapidly in Italian. I caught the word locket amidst the flow of unfamiliar syllables. When he hung up, he turned back to me, a new urgency in his movements. My men will begin searching immediately. In the meantime, you need to stay here, where I can protect you. The enormity of the situation pressed down on me. If what Alessandro said was true, if my father had been involved in money laundering, if his death hadn't been an accident, if this missing hard drive contained proof, then I was indeed in danger. But trusting this man, moving into his home, placing myself completely under his control. I need time to think, I said, rising from the chair on unsteady legs. This is too much to process all at once. Time is the one luxury we don't have. Alessandro moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something subtle and expensive with notes of sandalwood and amber. Whoever is looking for that hard drive now knows about you. They've already connected you to Petrov through your phone number. It's only a matter of time before they find you. How do I know you're not one of them? That this isn't some elaborate scheme to use me to find this mysterious locket that may or may not contain something valuable? His jaw tightened. You don't. That's the price I mentioned. Trust. You have to decide right now whether to trust me or not. That's not fair, I whispered, tears threatening again. You've had weeks to investigate me, to learn everything about me. I've known you for less than a week. Life isn't fair, Ellie. He reached out, gently brushing a tear from my cheek with his thumb. The simple touch sent electricity through me, confusing and unwelcome. If it were, your parents would still be alive, and we would never have met. I pulled away from his touch, needing space to think clearly. If I stay here, I need guarantees. I keep my job. I come and go as I please, with your security if necessary. And I want my own space, my privacy. All reasonable requests, he nodded. Though I must insist on approving your movements in advance, for security purposes. And when this is over, when you find what you're looking for, I get my life back, completely. You disappear from it as if you never existed. Something flickered in his eyes then, a darkness, a possessiveness that made my breath catch. Is that truly what you want? Before I could answer, the study door burst open. The driver who had brought us here rushed in, his normally impassive face tight with urgency. Boss, he said, his eyes flicking to me and then back to Alessandro. We have a situation. Your apartment in the city, it's been compromised. Alessandro's entire demeanor changed in an instant, a predatory stillness coming over him. Explain. The security system was disabled 7 minutes ago. Team 2 responded and found signs of forced entry. The place has been torn apart. Casualties? None of ours. There's a body. Male, approximately 35, single gunshot wound to the head. Not one of the usual players. ID says Robert Collins, but we're checking if it's legitimate. The name meant nothing to me, but Alessandro's expression darkened further. Facial recognition? Running now. Preliminary results suggest a connection to the Kazan group. Alessandro swore under his breath in what sounded like Italian. Lock down the estate. Double the perimeter guards. No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization. He turned to me, his expression grim. It seems your decision has been made for you. They're moving faster than I anticipated. Fear clutched at my throat as the reality of the situation hit me. This wasn't a game or an elaborate manipulation. People were dead. My parents, Gregory Petrov, this unknown man at Alessandro's apartment. And somehow, impossibly, I was connected to it all through a wrong number and a lost locket. What do we do now? I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. Alessandro's eyes met mine, dark and determined. We find that locket before they do, and I keep you alive, no matter what it takes. In that moment, standing in the firelit study of a mansion belonging to a man I barely knew, surrounded by dangers I was only beginning to understand, I made my choice. Not because I trusted Alessandro Russo, but because I had no other option. I was now irrevocably entangled in his dangerous world, and the only way out was through. Alessandro moved with swift, controlled precision, issuing orders in rapid Italian through his phone as he led me from the study. The driver, whose name I learned was Marco, followed close behind, his hand resting on the gun holstered beneath his jacket. Where are we going? I asked, struggling to keep pace with Alessandro's long strides. Somewhere even more secure. He guided me through a maze of corridors until we reached what appeared to be a dead end. Alessandro pressed his palm against a wood panel, which slid silently open to reveal a modern elevator. Few people know this part of the house exists. The elevator descended smoothly, opening onto a space that looked nothing like the old-world opulence of the mansion above. This was sleek, modern, all concrete and glass and stainless steel, a bunker designed with both luxury and security in mind. My private quarters, Alessandro explained, noting my surprise. The house above maintains certain expectations. For someone in my position, this is where I actually live. It was a stunning space, open concept, with one wall entirely made of glass that looked out onto an underground courtyard. A waterfall cascaded down a stone wall, illuminated by soft lighting that made the water shimmer like liquid silver. It's beautiful, I admitted, momentarily distracted from my fear. Beauty and security need not be mutually exclusive. Alessandro's phone rang, and he answered it, speaking again in rapid Italian before hanging up. Marco, prepare the surveillance feeds. I want eyes on every approach to the estate. Marco nodded and moved to a wall of screens, fingers flying over a keyboard. Alessandro turned to me. We need to talk about the locket. I've told you everything I remember, I said, sinking onto a minimalist sofa. The events of the evening had left me drained, the adrenaline beginning to ebb. It was silver, oval-shaped, with a filigree pattern. Nothing special. Was there anything unusual about it? Anything that seemed out of place or odd? I closed my eyes, trying to recall details of an object I hadn't seen in over a decade. It was heavier than it looked, and the back had some kind of pattern engraved on it. Not decorative, more like... I frowned, struggling to visualize it. More like numbers or letters. I assumed it was the maker's mark. Alessandro exchanged a glance with Marco. Did you ever open it, apart from seeing the photograph inside? Of course. It was a locket. I paused, remembering something. Wait. The photo wasn't glued in like you'd expect. It was in a tiny frame that could be removed. I took it out once to look at it more closely. And behind the photo, Alessandro's intensity had ratcheted up several notches. I shook my head. Nothing, just the empty space. Are you certain? He moved closer, his dark eyes fixed on mine. Think carefully, Ellie. Was there anything at all behind the photo? The intensity of his gaze made it hard to concentrate. Wait. A memory surfaced, dim with age but suddenly relevant. There was a small piece of paper tucked behind the photo. I thought it was just padding to keep the picture from rattling around. I never pulled it out. Alessandro straightened, excitement barely contained behind his controlled exterior. That could be it. Your father may have hidden account numbers, passwords, or coordinates on that paper. He turned to Marco. Expand the search parameters. Check safety deposit boxes in her parents' names, storage units, anywhere that might be accessed with a code or key. Marco nodded and stepped away to make a call. I still don't understand, I said, wrapping my arms around myself. If my father was involved in money laundering, why would he give me evidence that could incriminate him? To protect you. Alessandro sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. If he was planning to go to the authorities, he would have known the risk. The locket was insurance, proof that could corroborate his testimony if something happened to him, and something did happen to him. My voice cracked. He and my mother both died because he wanted to do the right thing, yes. Alessandro didn't sugarcoat it, didn't offer false comfort. Your father made dangerous enemies. The same enemies who are now looking for that hard drive. And for you. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. All these years I thought it was an accident. Random, senseless bad luck. Would knowing the truth have changed anything? His question was surprisingly gentle. Would it have brought them back? No, but... I looked at him, sudden realization dawning. Your family, the Russos, were they? No. He shook his head firmly. My family had no connection to your father's death. The organization he worked for was a rival operation, one that my father had been trying to dismantle for years. Your father? I hadn't considered that Alessandro's position might be inherited. Is he... dead, 6 years ago? Something flickered in his eyes, old pain, carefully controlled. He was poisoned at a meeting that was supposed to be a peace negotiation. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. He acknowledged them with a slight nod. I've spent the last 6 years consolidating power, eliminating rivals, and trying to legitimize our operations. The evidence on that hard drive would help me finish what my father started, dismantling the very organization responsible for your parents' deaths. The irony wasn't lost on me, so we both want the same thing, for different reasons. Perhaps not so different. His eyes held mine. We both want justice for our parents, and we both understand what it means to rebuild a life from ashes. Something shifted between us in that moment. A recognition, a connection I hadn't expected and wasn't sure I wanted. This man who had forcibly inserted himself into my life, who represented everything I should fear and avoid, suddenly seemed more human, more familiar. Marco cleared his throat, breaking the moment. Boss, the team found something. A safety deposit box at First National, registered to Elizabeth Morgan. He handed Alessandro a tablet. Opened 1 week before the fire. My heart raced. Elizabeth was my full name, though I'd gone by Ellie for as long as I could remember. My father opened a safety deposit box in my name, a common tactic when hiding something valuable. Alessandro studied the information on the tablet. We'll need access. I'd have to be there in person, I said. With ID. Too risky. If they've connected you to Petrov, they'll be watching banks. Alessandro rubbed his jaw, thinking. We need a distraction. Before he could elaborate, an alarm blared through the space. Marco rushed to the wall of screens, typing frantically. Perimeter breach. North quadrant. 3 vehicles, heavily armed. Alessandro's transformation was immediate and terrifying. The thoughtful man beside me vanished, replaced by someone colder, harder, a predator preparing for battle. How many? At least 12 hostiles. Our men are engaging, but they're using military-grade weapons. Evacuate Protocol 3. Alert all teams. Alessandro moved to a panel in the wall, which slid open to reveal an arsenal of weapons. He selected a handgun, checking it with practiced efficiency before tucking it into a shoulder holster. Marco, take Ellie through the tunnel. Get her to the safe house in the city. No. The word escaped me before I could think. Both men looked at me in surprise. No, I repeated more firmly. I'm tired of running, tired of being a pawn in a game I didn't choose to play. If my father's locket is the key to ending this, then I need to be the one to retrieve it. Alessandro studied me, something like respect flickering in his eyes. It's too dangerous. My entire life is dangerous now, thanks to you." I stood, finding strength in my anger. You don't get to decide what risks I take. Not anymore. A loud explosion rocked the building, dust sifting down from the ceiling. Marco's phone buzzed with urgent messages. "They've breached the main house. 8 minutes until they reach the elevator." Alessandro swore, then made a decision. "Change of plans. We all go together. Marco, the Bentley underground exit." He turned to me. "Stay close to me. Do exactly as I say. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. Understood?" I nodded, fear and determination warring within me. Understood. Good. He handed me a small pistol, which I accepted with trembling hands. Last resort only. Safety's on. Trigger requires firm pressure. The next few minutes passed in a blur. We moved through another hidden door into a garage housing several luxury vehicles. Marco brought a dark Bentley to life, while Alessandro guided me into the back seat, sliding in beside me. The garage door opened onto a tunnel, dimly lit and sloping upward. "The tunnel exits 3 miles from the estate," Alessandro explained, as Marco accelerated. "We'll have a head start, but not much of one. Once they realize we've escaped, they'll come after us." "Who are they?" I asked, gripping the door handle as Marco took a curve at alarming speed. "Kazan's men. He was Dawson's superior, the one who ultimately ordered your parents' deaths." Alessandro's phone buzzed with updates. "They've reached the bunker. They know we're gone." The tunnel seemed endless, the Bentley's headlights illuminating only a short distance ahead in the darkness. My mind raced, trying to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. My entire understanding of my life, my parents, had been upended. And now I was fleeing armed attackers in the company of a mafia boss who, despite everything, seemed determined to protect me. Finally, the tunnel ended, opening onto a deserted rural road. Marco extinguished the headlights, navigating by moonlight until we reached a main highway. Only then did he turn them back on, merging seamlessly with the sparse late-night traffic. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The bank first," Alessandro decided. "They won't expect us to go there directly. They'll assume we're running, not advancing. It's nearly midnight," I pointed out. "The bank won't be open." Alessandro's smile held no humor. "For me, it will be." True to his word, when we arrived at the First National Bank downtown, a nervous-looking man in a rumpled suit was waiting by the service entrance. He led us quickly through dark corridors to the vault area, his eyes darting everywhere except at Alessandro's face. "Box 1374, as requested, Mr. Russo." He fumbled with keys, unlocking a security gate. "I'll give you privacy. Stay within earshot," Alessandro instructed. "We won't be long." The man nodded and retreated to a discreet distance. Alessandro turned to me. "It will require your ID and signature." I handed over my driver's license, trying to ignore how surreal this midnight bank visit felt. Minutes later, a large safety deposit box sat on a private table. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a single item, a small velvet pouch. I tipped its contents onto the table, and there it was. The silver locket, exactly as I remembered it. Oval-shaped, with delicate filigree work on the front, and what I now recognized as numbers engraved on the back. "Coordinates," Alessandro murmured, examining the back. "And what appears to be a date." With trembling fingers, I opened the locket. The small photograph of my parents was still there, as vibrant as the day it was taken. I carefully removed the tiny frame, revealing a folded piece of paper behind it. Alessandro watched intently as I unfolded it. The paper contained a string of letters and numbers, written in my father's distinctive handwriting, followed by a brief message. "For Ellie. If you're reading this, I failed. The evidence is where we caught your first fish. Trust no one. I'm sorry. I love you, Dad." Tears blurred my vision. Alessandro gently took the paper, studying the code. This could be an account number, possibly offshore. And the message. "Do you know what it means? Where you caught your first fish?" Through my tears, I nodded. "Lake Sherwood. We had a small cabin there when I was a child. It's been years since I've been back. That's our next destination." Alessandro carefully refolded the paper and handed it back to me. Keep it safe. I tucked it into my pocket, along with the locket, which I fastened around my neck. Its weight felt both foreign and familiar, a tangible connection to my father and the secrets he'd tried to protect me from. As we left the bank, Marco tensed, his hand moving to his weapon. "Boss, we've got a tail. Black SUV, 2 cars back." Alessandro's reaction was immediate. "Change of plans. Marco, head for the docks. We'll take the boat to the lake." He turned to me. "The cabin. How far is it from the water?" "Right on the shore," I said. "We had a private dock." "Good." His arm went around me protectively as we hurried back to the Bentley. "Stay down once we're in the car." The drive to the docks was a nightmare of squealing tires and sudden turns as Marco attempted to lose our pursuers. Alessandro remained outwardly calm, issuing directions to Marco and occasionally checking the weapons he had brought. I crouched on the floor of the back seat, the locket clutched in my hand, my father's final message repeating in my mind. Trust no one. Had he meant Alessandro? Was I making a fatal mistake by leading him to the cabin, to whatever my father had hidden there? But if not Alessandro, who could I trust? The people pursuing us had killed my parents, had killed Gregory Petrov, would kill me without hesitation if they caught me. At least Alessandro had shown a desire to keep me alive, even if his motives weren't entirely altruistic. The car screeched to a halt. "We're here," Alessandro announced. "Stay close." The docks were deserted at this hour, the boats moored there rocking gently in the light chop. Alessandro led us to a sleek yacht, unlocking it with a key from his pocket. "You own a yacht?" I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. "Several," he replied, helping me aboard. "This one is the fastest." Marco took the helm while Alessandro secured the doors and windows. Within minutes, we were moving away from the dock, accelerating toward the open water. "Lake Sherwood is 30 miles north," I said, trying to orient myself. "We should be able to reach it in about..." The crack of gunfire interrupted me. A bullet shattered one of the yacht's windows, sending glass flying. Alessandro pushed me down, shielding me with his body. "They're behind us," Marco called. "Speedboat, closing fast. Can we outrun them?" Alessandro asked, still covering me. "Not in open water. Maybe in the Narrows, where we have the advantage of local knowledge." Alessandro's weight was both frightening and reassuring as he kept me protected. "Head for the Narrows. I'll deal with our guests." He shifted, allowing me to breathe but keeping me low. "Stay down, Ellie. Don't move from this spot." More gunfire erupted, bullets pinging off the yacht's exterior. Alessandro moved with surprising agility to a storage compartment, extracting what looked like a high-powered rifle. "Marco, cut the lights on my mark," he instructed, positioning himself by a window. 3, 2, 1, mark! The yacht plunged into darkness. Through the window, I could see the speedboat behind us, its spotlight sweeping the water, searching for us. Alessandro took aim, his breathing steady, controlled. The crack of his rifle was deafening in the enclosed space. Through the window, I saw the spotlight on the pursuing boat shatter. Alessandro fired twice more, and the speedboat's engine sputtered and died, leaving it drifting. "They're disabled," he announced, returning to me, "but we should assume they've called for backup. We need to reach the cabin quickly." Marco steered us through the Narrows, a winding channel between small islands, before the vast expanse of Lake Sherwood opened before us. Even in the darkness, the familiar shoreline sent a wave of memories washing over me. Summers spent swimming and fishing, my father teaching me to bait a hook, my mother calling us in for dinner from the cabin porch. "There." I pointed to a small private dock barely visible in the moonlight. "That's our cabin." Marco guided the yacht expertly to the dock. Alessandro helped me onto the weathered planks, his hand firm around mine. The cabin loomed ahead, dark and silent, unchanged in the decade since I'd last seen it. "Wait here," Alessandro instructed, drawing his gun. He approached the cabin cautiously, checking windows and doors before signaling that it was clear. The door creaked as I pushed it open, memories assaulting me with each step. The musty smell of disuse, the familiar silhouettes of furniture draped in dust covers, the stone fireplace where we'd roasted marshmallows on rainy days. "Where did you catch your first fish?" Alessandro asked, switching on a flashlight. Off the end of the dock, I replied. But he wouldn't have buried anything there. It's underwater. I moved through the cabin, trailing my fingers over dust-covered surfaces, searching for any sign of what my father might have meant. The small kitchen, the 2 bedrooms, the living area. Nothing seemed disturbed or unusual. Then I remembered. The boathouse. We kept the fishing gear there. That's where I caught my first fish. Not in the lake, but in the boathouse. I was practicing casting and accidentally hooked a mounted base on the wall. My father laughed for hours. Alessandro nodded to Marco, who took up a position by the front door, watchful. Together, Alessandro and I made our way to the small boathouse attached to the dock. The door was secured with a rusted padlock that Alessandro made quick work of. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old wood and forgotten summers. Fishing rods stood in a corner, cobwebs connecting them like gossamer threads, and on the wall, exactly as I remembered, hung the mounted bass, my first accidental catch. There, I pointed, behind that fish. That has to be it. Alessandro lifted the heavy mount from its hook, revealing a small metal safe embedded in the wall. A combination lock secured it. The numbers on the locket, I realized, pulling it from my neck. They must be the combination. With trembling fingers, I dialed the sequence engraved on the back of the locket. The safe clicked open, revealing a waterproof case inside. I removed it, feeling the weight of whatever was contained within. Alessandro's flashlight illuminated the case as I opened it. Inside was a hard drive, sleek, black, unremarkable except for what it contained, and a sealed envelope with my name written on it in my father's handwriting. The missing hard drive, Alessandro said quietly. Petrov must have found it, then hidden it again when he realized what it contained. But how did he know about this place? About the safe? Your father must have told someone. Or perhaps Petrov followed the same trail we did. The locket, the safety deposit box, the message. I clutched the envelope, torn between the desire to read my father's last words to me and the fear of what they might contain. Before I could decide, Marco's urgent voice called from outside. "Boss, vehicles approaching, multiple headlights." Alessandro took the hard drive, securing it inside his jacket. "We need to go. Now." We hurried back to the yacht, the envelope clutched in my hand, the empty case left behind. Marco had already started the engines, the yacht thrumming with power against the dock. "Wait," I said as Alessandro prepared to cast off the lines. "There's another way. A service road through the woods connects to a highway about a mile from here. They'll expect us to leave by water." Alessandro assessed the situation quickly. "Marco, take the yacht. Lead them away from the lake, then double back to the secondary extraction point. We'll meet you there." Marco nodded, understanding the unspoken order to act as a decoy. As he pulled away from the dock, Alessandro and I slipped into the woods, following a narrow path I remembered from childhood explorations. The forest was dark, the moon providing only intermittent light through the canopy above. Alessandro moved with surprising silence for his size, one hand holding mine, the other gripping his weapon. Behind us, I heard shouting and the sound of boat engines. Our pursuers had arrived at the cabin. "They'll search the boathouse first," Alessandro murmured. "Finding the empty case will slow them down, make them wonder if we've already escaped with the drive." We continued through the woods, the path growing fainter as years of disuse had allowed nature to reclaim it. My lungs burned from exertion, fear driving me forward despite the protest of muscles unused to such activity. Finally, the trees thinned, revealing a narrow dirt road beyond. Alessandro paused, listening intently, before leading me onto it. "The highway should be that way," I pointed north, trying to orient myself in the darkness. Before we could move, headlights appeared in the distance, approaching rapidly along the dirt road. "Back!" Alessandro hissed, pulling me into the cover of the trees. We crouched behind a fallen log, watching as a black SUV rumbled past, headed toward the cabin. The vehicle bounced over the uneven ground, its occupants scanning the surrounding forest. "They're searching the perimeter," Alessandro whispered. "We need to keep moving." We continued north, staying just inside the tree line, using the road as a guide without exposing ourselves. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, the distant glow of the highway appeared ahead. "My men will be waiting at a gas station 2 miles east," Alessandro said. If we can reach the highway without being seen, we'll make it. We were almost to the edge of the forest when the crack of a branch behind us shattered the silence. Alessandro whirled, pushing me behind him as a figure emerged from the darkness. I wondered when you'd show your face, Russo. The man who stepped forward was older, his silver hair gleaming in the moonlight, his accent vaguely Eastern European. In his hand was a gun, pointed steadily at Alessandro's chest. Always the hero, aren't you? Just like your father. Kazan. Alessandro's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. I see you still prefer to let others do the dangerous work while you arrive for the glory. The older man smiled thinly. A leader delegates, something your father never understood. His gaze shifted to me, and this must be James Morgan's daughter. The resemblance is striking. I stiffened at the mention of my father's name, spoken by the man who had ordered his death. She knows nothing, Alessandro said. This is between you and me. On the contrary, she led you right to what I've been searching for. Kazan's smile vanished. The hard drive, Russo. Hand it over and perhaps I'll allow you both to live. We both know that's a lie, Alessandro replied calmly. The moment you have what you want, we're dead. Kazan shrugged. Then you have nothing to lose by cooperating, do you? My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out. Alessandro stood between me and Kazan, his body tense, but his voice controlled. I could feel the envelope from my father crumpling in my clenched fist. If I give you the drive, Alessandro said slowly, I want your word that she walks away. She disappears, lives her life, never to be bothered by you or your organization again. Alessandro, no, I whispered, horrified by his apparent willingness to sacrifice himself. He ignored me, keeping his attention focused on Kazan. Do we have a deal? Kazan seemed to consider it. You always were soft, Russo, like your father. Sentiment is a weakness in our business. He nodded. Very well. The girl walks away, you give me the drive. A fair exchange. Swear it, Alessandro demanded. Swear on your honor, what little you have. You question my honor? Kazan's face darkened. I swear it. Now the drive. Slowly, Alessandro reached inside his jacket, extracting the hard drive. He held it up, the small device catching the moonlight. Let her go first. Kazan gestured with his gun. Girl, start walking toward the highway. Don't look back. I remained frozen, unwilling to leave Alessandro to die. He turned slightly, his eyes meeting mine, filled with an emotion I couldn't name. Go, Ellie. Live your life. Remember what I told you that first night. From now on, you're mine. No matter what happens, no matter where you go, a part of you will always belong to me. As a part of me will always belong to you. The unexpected tenderness in his voice stunned me. This wasn't just about protection or the hard drive anymore. Somehow, in the chaos of the past few days, something had changed between us, a connection forged in danger and shared purpose. I won't leave you, I said firmly. How touching, Kazan sneered. But ultimately futile. The drive, Russo. Now, or I kill her first and take it from your corpse. With deliberate slowness, Alessandro extended his arm, the hard drive in his open palm. Kazan stepped forward to take it, his gun never wavering from its aim at Alessandro's chest. In that moment, several things happened at once. A distant sound, the thrum of helicopter rotors, grew rapidly louder. Kazan's attention shifted momentarily toward the noise, and Alessandro moved with explosive speed, knocking the gun aside as it discharged, the bullet whizzing harmlessly into the trees. The two men grappled, falling to the ground in a desperate struggle for the weapon. I stood paralyzed, the father's envelope still clutched in my hand, as the sounds of their fight filled the clearing. A second shot rang out. Both men went still. Alessandro! I rushed forward, terrified of what I would find. He rose from the ground, breathing heavily, a bloody gash across his cheekbone, but otherwise unharmed. At his feet lay Kazan, unmoving, a dark stain spreading across his chest. The helicopter was directly overhead now, a spotlight cutting through the darkness to illuminate the clearing. Alessandro took my hand, pulling me close as figures in tactical gear rappelled down, weapons at the ready. Boss. One of them acknowledged Alessandro with a nod. Perimeter secure. Marco made it to the extraction point. We have vehicles waiting on the highway. Alessandro kept his arm around me, his body still tense. Kazan. The operative checked the fallen man. Dead. A complex mix of emotions crossed Alessandro's face: satisfaction, regret, weariness. He looked down at the hard drive still clutched in his hand, then at me. "It's over," he said softly. "Or it can be, if that's what you want." I stared at him, struggling to process everything that had happened. "What do you mean?" "I made you a promise. When this was over, you could have your life back. I would disappear as if I never existed." His dark eyes held mine. "Is that still what you want?" Before I could answer, I remembered the envelope in my hand. My father's last words to me. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside, reading by the harsh light of the helicopter's spotlight. "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, then my attempts to make things right have failed. I've made terrible mistakes, trusted the wrong people, and now those mistakes threaten to destroy the only thing that truly matters to me, you. The evidence on the drive will expose Kazan and his entire organization, including Richard Dawson, my former partner. I was blind to what they were really doing until it was too late. When I discovered the truth, that they were using my accounting skills to launder money for human trafficking, drugs, and weapons, I knew I had to stop them. I've hidden the drive, where only you would think to look for it. Trust no one with this information except one man, Antonio Russo, or his son, Alessandro. The Russo family has been fighting Kazan for years. They are not saints, Ellie, but they have a code, a honor that Kazan lacks. Forgive me for the danger I've put you in. Forgive me for the lies. Know that everything I did out of love for you and your mother. Find Alessandro Russo. Trust him with your life, as I would have trusted his father with mine. I love you. Always. Dad. I looked up from the letter, tears streaming down my face, to find Alessandro watching me intently. "You knew," I said. "You knew my father trusted yours." He nodded slowly. "I suspected. When Petrov stole the drive and was found with your number, I hoped it meant what I thought it did, that your father had left instructions pointing to the Russo family. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Would you have trusted a stranger claiming your father had allied himself with another crime family?" His voice was gentle. "I needed you to make your own choice, Ellie, to decide for yourself who to trust." I looked down at my father's letter, then at the man before me, dangerous, powerful, but also the man who had protected me, who had offered to sacrifice himself for me. The man my father had trusted. "What happens now?" I asked. "With the drive? With Kazan's organization?" "Now I finish what our fathers started." Alessandro's hand came up to touch my face gently. "With this evidence, I can dismantle Kazan's entire operation legally, through federal prosecutors who owe me favors. No violence, no more deaths. A clean end. And us? What happens to us?" The question hung between us, loaded with possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider until now. "That," Alessandro said softly, "is entirely up to you. I meant what I said before. You can walk away, return to your life, never see me again. Or, I prompted when he hesitated, "or you can choose a different path." With me, his thumb brushed away a tear on my cheek. "I won't pretend it would be simple. My world is complicated, dangerous at times, but I would protect you with my life. And perhaps together, we could build something neither of our fathers managed to achieve, a legacy that honors their sacrifice without repeating their mistakes." I thought of my quiet life as a nurse, the small apartment, the routine that had defined my existence since my parents' death. Then I thought of Alessandro, the intensity in his eyes when he looked at me, the unspoken connection that had grown between us through danger and revelation. "From now on, you're mine." I repeated his words from that first night. "Is that still what you want?" His dark eyes held mine, unflinching. "More than anything, but only if you choose it freely." In that moment, standing in a moonlit clearing with helicopter rotors thundering overhead and my father's last letter in my hand, I made my choice. Not out of fear or obligation, but out of the certainty that life had brought me to this crossroads for a reason. I reached up, my fingers tracing the scar on his cheekbone. Then I choose this path. I choose you. The smile that transformed his face was like nothing I'd seen before. Genuine, unguarded, almost boyish in its sudden joy. He pulled me into his arms, his lips finding mine in a kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning. When we finally broke apart, breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I'll spend every day making sure you never regret that choice. I'll hold you to that promise," I whispered. As we walked hand in hand toward the waiting vehicles, the hard drive secure and my father's letter safely tucked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The past, with all its secrets and lies, could finally rest. The future, uncertain as it might be, held possibilities I was ready to explore. I had answered a wrong number and found my destiny. Alessandro had claimed me as his, and now, against all odds, I had claimed him in return. From now on, we belonged to each other. And that was a beginning worth all the danger we had endured to reach it.